Sassi, who is the program manager of the Microsoft Airband initiative. And this is really an initiative that is really Microsoft's effort at connecting rural schools. So I'm going to welcome Melissa and let her talk to you more about it. Thanks, Melissa.
Should we play my video first?
We can, yes.
So before I start talking, thank you.
You want me to do it?
Before I start talking and introducing myself, I'd love to just play a video, and I think it'll paint a clear picture for all of you who are from rural communities and struggle with some of the challenges that we see, whether that's in South Dakota, Virginia, all over the country.
Just because you live in a rural area doesn't mean you shouldn't have the opportunity to be connected. It was about, I'd say, 9th grade year is when I began taking college classes through dual enrollment. And that requires that you upload papers and assignments to the college as well as to the high school. The internet was terrible at home, so I would have to do my assignments really early, like a whole month early.
He had to submit a lot of his paperwork. It's just going to sit there and just spin and spin and spin.
You know that the deadline's coming, and you know you need more research, and you know it's not enough. It's a struggle.
In the beginning of the semester, one of the questions I asked the students, just a show of hands, who has internet access? And typically, just a few. Right there, that tells me that I have to be a little limited in any kind of homework assignment I give. It's a handicap for teachers in the 21st century. I mean, here we are, hands are kind of tied.
The homework gap is a major problem for our region. And the exciting part is that Charlotte and Halifax County, our two pilot areas, are no longer going to be left behind in this digital divide. TV white space is a new technology that the FCC has allowed vendors to transmit broadband connections wirelessly over previously unused airwaves. Rural markets specifically, it is critical to have access to that lower band spectrum that allows internet providers to serve that last mile affordably. The goal is by fall to have about 250 connected, and we're hoping to have 1,000 families connected soon after that.
It's going to open the doors to economic development and allow the people in our area to have access to a world-class education.
It was a dramatic increase in productiveness and efficiency.
Dylan has a small antenna at his home, which is connected to a TV white space device, turns on his laptop, connects via Wi-Fi.
I don't know the tech side. All I know is it works.
Now that I have TV white space internet, I can use the cloud, and my grade actually shot up going forward with TV white space. I got high B's and A's.
This is where I grew up and I love it. I'm a country girl. Just train our kids so they can stay home and have that knowledge, and then they can bring it back here so that our community can grow.
TV white space held up very well with my college application. Once I graduate, I will be going to attend Old Dominion University in the fall, studying computer science, and I'm very excited to go.
Now they're making a Microsoft to use a Mac up here. I'm going to have to talk to Allison Knox about that.
That is kind of cruel, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah, this one right here.
I'm glad it's sitting down here so I don't get in trouble. So I'm Melissa Sassi, and how many of you live in a rural community, grew up in a rural community, or have some of the challenges that you heard from Dylan up here? So I'm from Missouri. I live in Seattle, and I work at Microsoft. And for me, I joined Microsoft as part of a personal passion. So if you think about our mission as an organization, it's to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Whether it's school, whether it's living on a farm, whether it's small business, doesn't matter what it is nowadays, it's quite impossible to achieve more without access to the internet. And that really implored us as a team and us as an organization to think, well, what does it mean to get connected to the internet? In some parts of the world, it's energy access, and it's getting people connected to energy first. If we think about the big numbers, forget about the US for a second, 50% of the world is offline. 1.3 billion people lack access to energy. From a Microsoft perspective, if you're not able to access the internet, you're not able to access electricity, well, you're not able to participate in the economy. Forget about going home and doing your schoolwork. Our team focuses on a partnership-driven approach. I think for many of you in the room thinking, well, what does that mean? Is Microsoft going out and serving as an ISP, or is now Microsoft going to become a telecommunications firm? No, we know what we're good at, and it's not necessarily being the boots on the ground that are replacing your local ISPs, but thinking about how we can help to solve the digital divide, whether that's through investments, whether that's through partnerships such as the one you saw in Virginia, which we'll talk a little bit about in a second, all the way through to all of the mini projects that we've been working on from around the world. If I stood up here, let's say, 6 months ago, this slide would look very, very different. In July, we made an announcement around our commitment to connect America's unconnected. I've spent a lot of my career outside of the United States, and shame on me, I'm from Missouri. I didn't realize that my family, my community members lacked access to the internet. I lived in my bubble in Seattle, and I had access, and I didn't realize, and I didn't spend enough time in my rural communities recognizing that the same challenges that I was working on solving outside of the US, we have them at home. And all of you, I think, are very, very familiar with the homework gap and many of the challenges that we have in our rural communities. So if we think about the US as a whole, what does the problem look like in the US? We talked about 50% of the world lacking access to internet. What does that look like in the US? What that looks like is 34 million Americans lack access to basic fixed broadband. Now, I think there's a lot of controversy these days around what does broadband actually mean. For those of you who are, of a technical mindset, we're talking about 25.3. The FCC's definition of broadband. So 34 million Americans lack access to broadband, 24 million live in rural communities. That's 40% of rural America. I know that was a shocking number that I recognized recently, and I'm very excited to take a number of our initiatives and bring them here. And it looks like this Mac has put italics on my slide, so that's okay. All right, so we've got, again, 40% of rural America lacking access to broadband. We've made a commitment to kick off a number of projects both this year and setting a 5-year goal. So year one, we're kicking off 12 projects in 12 months. You'll notice it says 13 here. When we made our announcement back in July, we announced 12. We've since added one. And I think as a team, we're working through, what does that mean for the rest of the US? So for those of you who are thinking, well, wait a second, I heard about Microsoft's commitment, or I don't know what those states are yet. How do I get my state included? I think we've got a number of different initiatives right now to evaluate how do we make sure that we're bringing affordable broadband access to all of our country. But you've got to put your foot in the water somewhere. That said, we have a 5-year goal, and that's bringing 2 million Americans under coverage. I think we're making some great progress in terms of our states, both pilots as well as a lot of conversations with educators such as yourselves. But we've also made a number of other commitments, and that's opening up IP. That's also making a call to the US government, the FCC specifically, to help us gain better access to data, so that when I put up a chart like this, I don't have 3 other organizations out there that might put up a different chart that claims that 100% of the US has access. I was in a meeting on Friday, and a woman stopped me and she said, I see your slide, but I just want to let you know it's wrong. So I'm like, okay, what do you mean it's wrong? And she said 100% of the US has access. I'm like, okay, well, what do you define as access? Well, anybody can access through dial-up. Thanks. That said, we know that just having access is not enough. For those of you who are, either learners or teachers or administrators or decision makers, It's also about digital literacy. Without the right skills, access is just one part of digital inclusion. So we've partnered together with 4-H. Who was in 4-H when they were younger? Who's in 4-H now? All right. So we're very, very excited to have partnered with 4-H to really identify at the local level what's relevant for each of our local communities. Sitting in Redmond or sitting here in DC, it's easy for us to say, what do we think kids need in the classroom? What do we think a mother might need to transform her life or her career or her family through digital inclusion? But working together with 4-H and educators like yourselves, kind of figuring out what specifically does digital inclusion mean at the local level. So these are our states. I know for those of you who are looking, I'm from Missouri. I'm trying to figure out how to lobby my boss to add Missouri. But we're very excited to have a list of priority states. Again, all states are important, and we're very excited to start landing projects in each of these states. If you think about the different use cases we're focused on, I think education is a big piece of that. And I think for most of you, you're probably wondering, okay, well, I heard about this TV white spaces thing. Is this the first time that any of you've heard about TV white spaces, or who's heard about TV white spaces before today? Who heard about Microsoft's Airband initiative before today? All right. So I'm honestly very excited about the technology behind this, but I think we all have a role in making sure that people are aware, including our local ISPs, that it's possible. We have a lot of conversations with local ISPs who have not experimented with the technology and are not aware of the value that it can bring to connect our rural communities. So a lot of what we're doing now is really building momentum and advocacy around the viability of TV white spaces. It's essentially tapping into unused radio waves or unused TV channels to connect to the internet, which seems a bit sci-fi for those of us who might not be in an IT sector. But if you see it as, if you think about the Virginia initiative, imagine having a broadband connection that's going into the school. How many of you have a broadband connection at school? Yeah. And essentially what we've done is we've put an antenna on top of the school and essentially extended the fiber connection into the community. So how it works is you have this antenna, you have client radios that are installed in each of the homes. That's essentially facilitating that two-way communication. Again, extending that broadband connection from the school into the homes. We've been able to tap into E-rate funding. Also, a lot of conversations with the local broadband, funding and other kinds of conversations at the local level. Again, making sure that we have solid partners that are in the local community. In this particular situation, we've installed 100 to 200 devices in the schools. And if you think about, okay, wait a second, how does that work then? These individual students have the opportunity to tap into their school network. So it could be whatever's available on the school network versus the wider internet. Now these families also have the opportunity then to top up that connection. So if they want to gain access to whatever kind of cat videos they want to watch or anything else more powerful that might not be available through their school internet connection. This is one example. We've got other exciting things happening in school buses in Michigan, and we're excited to continue to evaluate other opportunities throughout our focus states and beyond, so that we can really connect our students. How many of you have students who go home and are not able to connect and not able to do their homework? We hope to solve that. Here's here is our email address. Again, I'm Melissa Sassi, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time to hear about our project. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to be able to see how we can connect our schools from around the world or around the country. Thank you. With that, now I have to figure out which one of you is Todd.